Good morning. I'm Beatriz Rodriguez, the director of the North Carolina AgrAbility Partnership. Our first session today is the dynamic funding options for assistive technology needs for farmers and ranchers. With Paul Jones, Education and Resources Specialist at National AgrAbility Project, and Kerry Wilson, Regional Manager for the Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation.
Well, thank you very much, Betty, for that introduction. Again, we're going to be talking about assistive technology and specifically funding for technology. If you know much about AgrAbility, you know that we provide quite a variety of different services, and one of the important aspects of what we do is to get the needed technologies for the clients that we work with. Many of them need some type of device, equipment, in order for them to be able to overcome barriers in doing the tasks that they need to do on their farms or ranches. I'm going to quickly just share my screen. And if you have not yet visited the Assistive Technology database on our website called the Toolbox, I'd encourage you to do that. Right now, there are 1,631 different types of products that we categorize as assistive technology that we have on that site. One of the things I wanted to just point out quickly is that AT is quite varied in both type and cost. If you were part of the webinar last Thursday, you probably saw some lifts like this that help somebody get into a piece of equipment. Very necessary for many of our farmers, but also quite expensive. And so funding for that type of thing is important. On the other hand, there are lower tech types of assistive technology. This is a gripping cuff. It probably costs about $50, so many of our farmers might be able to afford something like that. But my point is that there's quite a wide range of devices that could be used for helping somebody accommodate their disability in agriculture. One of the more common devices that we see recommended for our clients is some type of utility vehicle, and that's important for people with mobility issues to get around their property, to haul things, equipment, supplies, feed, and also to keep them safely distanced from livestock if they're dealing with livestock. Another thing about AgrAbility is that we are not allowed to provide we're not allowed to directly provide assistive technology to our clients or funding. That's prohibited through our USDA grants. So one of our tasks is to network with other organizations that can help with that. And probably our most important partner is the state vocational rehabilitation systems. There's a VR office system in every state, and they are key to providing this assistive technology for our farmers. So today, the bulk of our presentation is going to be provided by Kerry Wilson, who's from Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation. She's been instrumental not only in assisting AgrAbility clients at the state level, but she's also been very helpful in terms of our national AgrAbility project efforts to kind of quantify some of the methods that VR can use for assisting our clients. Before I turn it over to Kerry, just a couple other quick notes. If you go to the homepage of the National AgrAbility Project and you scroll down the main menu, you will find a funding assistance page, which could be helpful. I'd encourage you to look at that if you have not. And it's quite a long list of resources, but we've broken it into four main types. Rehabilitation funding assistance from government sources, which would include VR. Rehabilitation funding assistance from non-governmental organizations, and then agricultural funding assistance from government sources, and agricultural funding assistance from non-governmental organizations. We get a lot of inquiries not only about assistive technology, but other funding issues on farms, such as, I need to get an operating loan, or I need a hoop house, or I need some other type of financial assistance to run my enterprise. And so we've got quite a variety of different resources listed on that page. A couple other things I just wanted to mention before I turn things over to Carrie is that for veterans, the Veterans Administration can be a source of funding for assistive technology. You should definitely explore that if you're a veteran. State Assistive Technology Act programs. If you were to look under this rehabilitation funding assistance from non-governmental organization, there's a list of the Association of Assistive Technology Act programs. There's one in every state. They may not be able to buy a lift or a UTV, but they have loan programs, and they have lending libraries of certain types of assistive technologies. Also, don't forget the local aspect, your extension offices, churches, service clubs, other local sources. And then I just want to mention crowdfunding is becoming more popular with many people in terms of GoFundMe and other sites that can be used for providing funding. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Carrie for the presentation, and I just want to say thank you again to her for being part of our presentation this morning.
I'm here today to try to give you just some general information about vocational rehabilitation. I'm going to hope that I can help you see how VR might be a good resource for yourself if you're a farmer, or for yourself if you are working with an AgrAbility project or another service provider. So I'm going to start out and tell you just a little bit about myself. There we go. So yes, my name is Carrie Wilson, and I'm currently employed with Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation. I achieved my PhD in social work back in 2008, and my main area of research actually centered around the subject of employee engagement. So I had the privilege of traveling around to quite a few different states, and then also to presenting to some national groups of VR staff and supervisors about the subject of keeping their staff engaged with their jobs. And I'm only telling you that to say that because of those experiences, I had the opportunity to get to know how VR programs operate in states other than Missouri. And I'm certainly not an expert on how every VR program is run, but I do have a pretty good understanding of some of the things that are consistent across the states, and then some of the things that make every VR program just a little bit unique. So I have been with VR for 26 years. I worked for 8 years as a VR counselor, and then 10 years as a district office supervisor, and 9 years as a regional manager. And I currently have the responsibility of being the lead staff for self-employment and farm services for the state of Missouri. And this is a picture on the screen of myself and my two colleagues, Ray and Rob. We make up the farm services team in Missouri. And this is us working at a booth at the Missouri Western Farm Show, which is the largest farm show in Missouri. And our great partners at Farm Bureau allow us to come every year and set up a booth and try to get the word out about how VR can help farmers. So that's basically who I am professionally. But who I really am at heart is a farmer's daughter. So I was born and raised on a 2,000-acre row crop farm right here in central Missouri. Over the years, we also had some hogs and cattle, and my family was very involved in farm organizations at the local, state, and even really the national level. And then as an adult, I actually owned and operated 4 broiler houses where we raised chickens for Tyson Foods. So, and one of the photos here is myself with a horse. My hobby on the side is riding and showing quarter horses. So while I may not know you personally, I know who you are. I understand the culture of farming. I know your work ethic, and I understand that the work that our farmers do is some of the most important work in the world. I know that it's very critical that farmers are able to keep living their lifestyle and doing what they love, which is working on the farm. So with that, I'm very honored to talk to you today. I'm going to try to give some information about vocational rehabilitation that can help farmers, but also help those of you who might be working for AgrAbility or another service agency that partners with VR. I'm going to try to cover 3 main topics today. So first, we'll talk just a little bit about what VR is and how you can get connected to VR services. And then we'll go through the eligibility requirements for the VR program. And finally, we'll talk some about the services, including assistive technology, that can be provided through the VR program. And then we'll go through just a few examples of some of the items that have been purchased here by Missouri VR. Okay, so we'll jump right into what is vocational rehabilitation. VR is a federally funded program within the U.S. Department of Education, and we're housed in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. So we are overseen by the Rehab Services Administration. And VR actually celebrated our 100-year anniversary. We were signed into law 100 years ago by President Woodrow Wilson. It was the first federally funded program to assist people with disabilities when their disability was not a result of military service. So every state in the United States has a VR program, and some states actually have two programs because they have one agency for services to the blind and visually impaired, and then another agency for general VR services. But the good thing is the law tells us that VR services must be provided statewide. So that means that no matter where you're located in the United States, you should have access to a VR program. Now, the purpose of the VR program is actually quite simple and very straightforward and clear. The purpose of the VR program is to help individuals with disabilities to achieve their employment goals by obtaining a new job or maintaining their current job. So how can you get connected to a VR program? That's actually pretty simple too. The first step is simply to make contact with a VR office near you. But how to go about finding that office, there is a link on the RSA website that I've listed here on the screen that does have a list of all the VR programs in the United States. Or you can simply go to your own state's website and hopefully you will find a link there to your VR program. A simple Google search will usually bring up VR. For instance, if you type in into Google Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation, our website should be the first thing to pop up. And then you can also just simply use your personal contacts to find out where the closest VR office would be. So we'll talk just a little bit about what a typical VR experience might look like. Once you get connected to VR, you'll go through an application process. This generally would include you filling out some paperwork and officially requesting to have a VR case. Then you'll be assigned to a VR counselor, and that person will work with you from the beginning to the end of your VR program. The VR counselor's role is not simply to provide you with a list of things that you qualify for, but is to work with you on developing an individualized plan for employment. So it's the VR counselor's responsibility to address your employment needs and to help you come up with a realistic vocational goal. And the VR counselor is also responsible for verifying that the services they provide you and that the VR dollars that are spent are directly tied to your employment needs and goals. Okay. So one of the first things your VR counselor will ask for is information about your disability. And this is so that they can determine if you're eligible for the program. Eligibility requirements for VR are also pretty straightforward and simple. It requires documentation of a disability that causes an impediment to your employment and verification that you're able to work in some capacity. So now you might be wondering what qualifies as a disability. This is actually a very broad category in VR. It can be physical, like arthritis, mobility issues, hearing loss, vision loss, back injuries, head injury, seizure disorder, just about anything that your doctor has diagnosed you with and treated you for when that condition causes ongoing limitations to employment. Or it could be a mental illness or drug and alcohol dependence or even a learning disability. So if you're experiencing difficulties with your employment due to any mental or physical condition, then you might be eligible for the VR program. And in addition to the documentation of your disability, you will also have to be of age to work and be able to participate in employment activities. Okay, so once you're found eligible for the program, then you'll work with your VR counselor to come up with an individualized plan for employment. And there are two key words to focus on here. The first is individualized. This is one of the foundations of VR services. No two people have the same employment needs, so no two plans look the same. and no two people will receive the exact same services. And then the second word is employment. Once again, the VR agency can only assist with services and items that tie directly to a person's realistic vocational goal. So as you work with your VR counselor, it's going to be important to share information about your farm life and your occupation. Many VR counselors are not familiar with farming as a job, so anything that you can do to help them understand will be helpful. Most VR counselors really love to learn new things, and their goal is to help you, but they just may be confused about some things with farming. They might not understand the scope of the tasks you have to complete, and they might not have experience looking at farm income. So again, it's just important that they can visualize how you make your living. But once you and your VR counselor have agreed that it's reasonable and appropriate for the VR agency to assist you with the goal of continuing to farm, you'll work together to determine what steps are needed to overcome the limitations of your disability and be able to return to completing most or all of your tasks on the farm. So this process might look really different depending on what state you're receiving services from. In Missouri, we typically have myself and the VR counselor or one of the other farm services team members go out and visit you on the farm. And this is just a picture of one of my colleagues out with a farmer touring his ranch. I think they were actually looking at putting in some automatic gate openers. So just being out on the farm really helps us better understand what's going on there and what tasks are needing to be completed and how we might best be able to help. So in Missouri, we also frequently contract with our AgrAbility program so that VR can provide funding for an agricultural assessment. So I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with what an assessment looks like, but basically this process just involves one of the AgrAbility staff going out to the farm and walking through the task to help find out what the needs are. And they actually help explore what pieces of technology might be needed. And then this is very important for us on the VR side. The AgrAbility staff provide a report to the VR counselor where they recommend various pieces of equipment. And we'll talk later about some of the examples of things that VR has been able to purchase, but we're very thankful in Missouri for the partnership that we have with AgrAbility, because having them help with our farm cases allows VR counselors who don't have any experience at all with farming to be better able to serve the farmer. So another important point about the VR program is that it comes at no cost to the client. It's not a grant or a loan. You will not be asked to pay for the services you receive, but some state VR programs do have income guidelines. So meaning that if you exceed a certain amount of income, there may be services that VR cannot fund. If your income is over the guidelines, unfortunately, VR may not be able to buy assistive technology for you. But I would encourage you to check into VR services even if your income is very high, because there are some things that can be provided regardless of your income. Also, if you are receiving Social Security benefits, you're automatically exempt from income guidelines. And some states, like in Missouri, take into account any money you may have spent on medical bills or on purchasing disability-related items. So the only way to find out what you might be eligible to receive from VR is to actually apply for services and work with your VR counselor. Now, just another side note, there are a few things under the law that VR cannot purchase, and land and property is one of those things. And then some states have additional items that they've added to their state rule that they cannot purchase. So for example, in Missouri, we are not able to purchase licensed vehicles, and we're not able to purchase live animals. So again, the only way to really know what you might be eligible for from VR is to work directly with your VR agency. But once your plan for employment is developed, then the VR agency actually has funding to assist you in obtaining whatever is necessary to meet your goal. And remember, services are individualized, so I can't provide you with a list of what is available, but I can tell you that every VR client receives guidance and counseling from a professional VR counselor, and then they may also receive things like funding for college or training for proprietary school, hearing aids, wheelchairs, prosthetic limbs, vehicle modifications, clothing or uniforms, assistive technology, computers, and the list just goes on and on. VR can provide almost any item or service that is directly tied to the client's vocational goal. So, and as I mentioned earlier, the services or items you receive from VR are not alone. So if you receive an assistive technology item and you're able to verify that you're using it for employment purposes, then that item essentially belongs to you. Some states do have policies to track the equipment, so should you be unable to use it for employment purposes, you may be asked to return it. But in broad general terms, the items that you receive from a VR program will belong to you. So, once the items and services that you've received have been purchased and by VR and you're able to return to work, then your VR counselor will stay in touch with you for at least 90 days. And if all is well, your case will be closed. So that's a very brief version of how you can get involved with the VR program and how the basic process works. But now we can talk about some more interesting and exciting things. I've added just a few statistics here from the Missouri VR program, and you'll note that these are unofficial. That's because it's a little difficult to pull out of all of our thousands of cases exactly which ones were provided, which ones were farmers, but these statistics are the minimum numbers of farmers that VR served. In 2018, we worked with 40 farmers or ranchers and spent over $350,000 on services and equipment for those farmers. In 2019, we worked with 15 farmers and spent over $100,000. And then so far in 2020, we've worked with 13 farmers, spent over $240,000, and that number is actually going to be much higher. I'm currently in the process of consulting with, I think, 6 or 7 different farm cases right now as we speak. So that's just kind of a little snapshot of how many services VR provides to farmers here in Missouri. And I've included this slide. It might be of interest to some of you, especially who may be working with an AgrAbility program or another service agency. In Missouri, about 6 or 7 years ago, I kind of created a farm services training for our staff with the idea that VR folks who weren't familiar with farming may have a harder time serving farmers. So every other year we bring as many people from our agency that would like to come, be it administrators, supervisors, counselors. We invite them out to my parents' farm for 2 days, and they are able to sit through presentations from service providers. And this picture happens to be our AgrAbility director, Karen Funkenbush, presenting to the VR staff. And so that's great. We get to learn a lot about our partners, but one of the highlights of the 2-day experience is the opportunity to go out and visit 3 or 4 different farming operations. So these counselors and supervisors, they may be from very urban areas like St. Louis or Kansas City. They may have never been to a farm, or they may work in rural areas, and they may have quite a few clients who are farmers. So they're coming to learn just to kind of expand their knowledge base. So far, every year, we've been able to have every person in attendance ride in a state-of-the-art combine while they are harvesting corn. They're able to test out other various adaptive equipment, and more importantly, they're able to just visit with the farmers and ask questions about their operations and the tasks that they do. We've had great reviews from this training. People look forward to it, and unfortunately, we were not able to do it this fall because of COVID, but hopefully next year we'll be back on track with that. So that's kind of a fun thing that we do in Missouri just to strengthen our partnerships and increase the knowledge base of our staff. This was one of our VR staff having the chance to try out a Life Essentials lift. We were very lucky that Life Essentials was willing to come down and bring some equipment for us to try out. And we do purchase these on a fairly regular basis for our farmers here in Missouri, the different types of equipment lifts. This is kind of a rewarding thing to be a part of. We also partner in Missouri with a local organization called Farm Dog, and they train dogs to assist farmers with a variety of tasks. And you'll remember VR in Missouri is not able to purchase live animals, but what we can do is purchase training for an animal. So we've been able to help with the training of several farm dogs that work livestock. Some are trained to retrieve dropped items. Some have even been trained to provide kind of a safety barrier between the client or the farmer and their livestock. And always during our farm training, we have these folks come and do a demonstration. It's really amazing to see these dogs work, and it's really rewarding to see a farmer be able to, have a trained farm dog. We also have purchased a number of UTVs. So this is one that we actually purchased for a farmer. In addition to just simply purchasing the vehicle, we're able to do some accommodations. This one is equipped with hand controls, and it has a cab around it so the farmer doesn't have to be out in the elements. So it's one of the items that we don't purchase licensed vehicles, but luckily off-road and farm vehicles we have been able to purchase. So we've also in Missouri purchased several action track chair all-terrain wheelchairs, a lot of automatic gate openers, hand controls for pickups and ATVs, modified tractor seats. We've purchased recently a dart gun for a livestock farmer so that he could medicate his livestock without having to call for help for that. We've recently purchased a backup camera for a grain truck. So those are kind of some of the newer pieces of technology that we've just recently seen. This is an example of a four-wheel drive pickup that VR was able to modify for a farmer. As you know, a minivan is fairly common to modify for a power wheelchair, but not so practical for use on the farm. Modifying a four-wheel drive pickup is a little more difficult and costly, but we have been able to do that so that the farmer can get out. In this unit, the side of the pickup actually slides open and you're able to drive your wheelchair in and be lifted up and slid into position for driving. So that's been very exciting and rewarding to see. And I see this farmer out and about all the time. So it's really great to see those kinds of things in practice. And I'll just leave you with a little bit of a message of hope. First, I just want you to know that VR is available and we're ready to serve our country's farmers and ranchers. There may be some knowledge gap though, between what you do as a farmer and what the VR counselor understands about your occupation. So I would encourage you, if you're a farmer, just be prepared to help VR understand your job. And if you're another service agency or provider, such as an AgrAbility staff, and if you feel like you're having a little bit of trouble developing a close partnership with VR, I would encourage you to just keep trying. Maybe focus on finding one or two people in the program that have knowledge about farming, or even a staff person who just happens to have a passion for learning about agriculture, and then just develop a relationship with that one person. I think that's likely to grow and lead you to other folks in the VR agency that might even have influence over the state's processes and policies. And I think the result will be just better mutual understanding and ultimately, of course, better services to our farmers. So please, if you're a farmer or a rancher with a disability and you're struggling to keep your life's occupation, don't hesitate to reach out to the VR program, because we are here and we're ready to help. So with that, I will, if there are any questions or if you want me to follow up on something, I'd be happy to do that.
Good morning, everyone. We do have one question. I will try and get that onto the screen right away. The question here is there an equine assisted therapy program that VR or AgrAbility works with? Can you answer that, Carrie?
That's a great question. In Missouri, VR is not specifically partnered with an equine therapy program. We do have some in the state, and we have, I will say, we've made a couple of visits out to some programs to talk about mutual referrals, because the folks who are participating in equine assisted therapy have a disability, and sometimes they're not actively farming, but they may be looking at other occupational choices. And so we have tried to develop a relationship with some of the programs here in Missouri, but we don't specifically fund those programs.
Okay, the next question then is about how long does it generally take from intake to case closure for your farmers and ranchers?
Well, that's a great question, and it really would vary. Services are individualized, so we do have some federal timeframes that we follow. We have 60 days to find out if you're eligible for the program, and another 90 days after that to develop your plan for employment, and then we would begin working toward fulfilling that plan. Sometimes if it's simple and straightforward, it may move very quickly. Other times, the process may be a little slower, but in general, one of our core requirements is that we act with a sense of urgency and we move quickly. So we try to go as quick as we can.
Thank you. And the next question, does VR help people who do not have a farm set up yet, but who are planning on it obviously as income, as a work?
Yes, we can. We can help people with self-employment. So if you're wanting to start up an operation, the process would look a little different. It is required that we have a business plan. So then you would have to kind of come up with a detailed and fairly formalized business plan indicating how that is going to hopefully be successful. So it's a little different than maintaining your job, but yes, we do help with self-employment startup.
Okay, Carrie, I don't have this one on the screen, but there is a question. How do you all work with veteran vocational rehabilitation organizations?
Well, we do, we can partner. We have to be careful not to duplicate services. So if someone is receiving employment services from the VA program, we can also provide assistance. We just can't duplicate. So we have to communicate and make sure that we're all working together and not duplicating services.
But the question is, in Missouri, do farmers or ranchers have a feasibility study to confirm that their farm or ranch is viable before VR will assist them?
We do not have a formalized feasibility study. We do usually take that trip out to the farm, so that we can get a better understanding about what the operation is like. It is important in every VR program, every state is going to have some threshold that they would like to see probably the farmer meeting as far as viability, and it all kind of comes down to income earning. So in order for a VR case to be successful, we have to demonstrate that the person is able to earn an income at or above minimum wage. So that process of trying to figure that out looks a little different from state to state. Missouri does not have a formalized feasibility study, but we are going to be asking questions and probably looking at your income tax to see if your farm or your operation is generating income.
Okay, Betty, we don't have any more questions at this time. We just had another one come in. Does autism count?
Yes, as a disability, yes.
Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, we thank Dr. Carrie Wilson for being here with us today, and Paul Jones, who gave you that great information about other resources. And thank you everybody for being here with us today.